Hi everyone, I'm Glenn, maintainer of the VS Code extension liveSassCompiler. First, let me apologise if the video quality isn't fantastic. I'm not working with the best of resources, but I do hope they get better with time. Now, let's dive in and discuss what liveSass is and how it works. So, liveSass allows you to compile your Sass files into CSS files directly from the VS Code window. My aim with these videos is to upload a new one with every minor and major release, just so that I can discuss the new features or breaking changes that there might be. So that's it, shall we dive in? I think we shall. In order to install the extension, what you're going to have to do is just jump over to your sidebar. Yours might be on the left hand side, don't mean to throw you off. But if you come down here and then you can just type in the top liveSassCompiler, because it won't be on the top on yours. And what you want to do is install this one just here, authored by myself, Glenn. You'd normally have a blue button, but to save time I've already installed mine, so you'd click on that and it'd install. As soon as it pops up saying it's installed, a little window down here, that's it, it's done, all ready to go. So before I go diving into using the extension, I just wanted to talk about the settings in VS Code and how you can change those. So the first thing you want to do is open the command palette, which can be done in one of three ways. So you can click up here, do a greater than symbol, yeah, had to think about it. Or you can press F1, or you can press Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on Mac. And what we're going to do is just go open settings, and actually there's a few here, but the first one I'm just going to touch on is the user interface. So VS Code comes with its own handy user interface on how to change settings and things like that. So basic settings that require a tick box, or just an option, a drop down option, or just a simple number or something like that, they can all be sorted directly from the UI. Obviously you may find that there are some things that you have to edit with the settings JSON, like a few of mine, they require a few different sort of options like true, false, null, that sort of thing. So that requires a bit more interaction with the JSON file. So just before I jump over the JSON, obviously just wanted to mention this thing up here. So if you're a standard user, if you're a single user and you find that you're always going to be using the same settings across every single workspace that you use, then user settings allow you to just say, right, this is how I'm going to work on all of my projects, so just don't make me change the settings for every single one I open. So you can set all your base settings in there, and then that's it, just start working. Obviously if you find that you work on multiple projects, share projects, or working on a project that is new to you and has its own settings, that's where workspace comes into things. So workspace allows you to override user settings and just say, right, yeah, this are the user settings, but I want to do this instead. And that's where workspace overwrites those user settings. So let's just jump over to the UI, the JSON. So as this is a new workspace, clicking on that edit button has created a settings JSON file in a VS Code folder, and this is just the standard place that VS Code looks for these settings. So this allows you to just edit any settings that require a bit more in-depth detail, or are a bit more complicated than a yes/no number and so on. And with the help of VS Code's IntelliSense, you can find that you don't really have to remember every single one. I could literally just say that I want to not generate a map file. So generate map, and the default for that is true, and then it just allows me to change that to false. And saving that then means that when I next go to compile a file, it'll just not include that map file. And that's it. Obviously any settings you change in the UI will be reflected in this JSON file. Both are the exact same thing, one just looks pretty. So now we've done that, let's just quickly delete all this, and then we'll jump into starting just using the extension, waking it up. Now the extension's installed, let's jump in and show you how it works. So as you can see, at the moment the window looks basically no different, and that's because the extension isn't actually activated yet. The extension will only activate when there's a Sass file in the project. So that's one with the .scss or .sass extension. So let's just quickly drop one of those into our project, and as soon as I click enter, a few things are going to change. So there we go, I've got the Sass file in there, and just down at the bottom down here you can see we have this watch Sass button. So that's telling you that the extension is successfully activated and is ready to start watching your Sass. By default it won't actually start watching when you launch. So when I save this file now, nothing's being done, no changes. When I save it, nothing. So let's click the button and turn on the watching, and when I do this a few things are going to change, so let's quickly do that, and there we go, a couple of things happen there. So we now got this status change down here saying watching. We have this pop-up window come up here just telling you that it's generated 2 files and now it started watching, just sort of like a log of what's happened. And then in our Explorer we can see we have our 2 files here created by, again, all by the default settings. So yeah, that's it. Nice and simple. You can just install, click and go if the default settings are what you want. But I can hear some of you shouting saying, oh, I don't want it saved in that format or in that location, or I just don't want that annoying pop-up thing to come up every time I save a file, which is all great, and that's where the settings come in. So let's go over those settings, shall we? Now I've jumped over to my other project, which is a multi-root workspace. I only mention that because each folder that you can see on the right hand side is its own workspace, meaning that settings within each of those won't affect the settings of the other folders in my workspace. Just wanted to quickly mention that, and I will talk about multi-root workspaces at the end of the video if you wanted to hang around for that. Just a bit more detail what they are, how to set them up and whatnot. So yeah, now we're here, I can finally start talking about the settings of the VS Code extension, and yeah, highlight some of the features too. Setting number 1 I'm going to talk about is formats. Formats takes an array of objects. So if I just pop this out here, each object contains a format, an extension name, savePath, and savePathReplacementPairs. There are 3 more, but I'll touch on those later. So by taking an array of objects, it means that you can have an output for development work that is nicely formatted for yourself, and then you can have a second one that's compressed and ideal for production environments. So by taking this array of formats, it allows you to do this. The first setting within the object is format. So we've just got a basic CSS file here. I'm just going to open my settings, and I am going to just put in formats apparently. Let's try a different one. Formats, there we go. So again, it's filled it in with the default settings, so expanded, CSS extension, savePath and savePath replacement pairs both being null. And what this all means is that it's going to save it in a nicely formatted way with a .css extension, and it's going to save it, because these are both null, in the exact same place where the file's created. So now when I save this, as you can see, it's created a nicely formatted CSS file. So let's jump back over to the settings, change this to compressed, save that, there we go. Now when I save that, you can see it's changed it into a nice compressed format. So next up is extension name. So extension name allows you to change the suffix on your the file that you're saving. So let's say that when I have it expanded, I want it to have just a .css file, and when I want it compressed, I want it to actually have a .min CSS extension. So let's save that, and now let's open our extension name one and save this. So as you can see, we now have a main.css, which is nicely formatted, and a main.min.css, which is compressed. The next item in the object is savePath. So just going to quickly drop out this folder here. And as you can see in this example, I've got my main Sass file underneath a folder that's called Sass. And with my savePath, what I can do is a few different things. So firstly, I can say from my workspace folder root, so in this case, my formats folder, I want to save it in the same folder there, but then rather than sticking it in the Sass folder, I want to stick it in a new folder called CSS. So let's just jump over and, oh, like I said, CSS is a new folder. But great thing about the extension is save that, and it's created the folder for you, and then dump the files within that there. So yeah, that's created that there for you. As well, with this extension, it allows you to say that relative to the file that I'm working on, that's what this little tilde slash refers to there, that I want to actually then, from where the file I'm working at, I want to go up one level. So again, to the savePath folder. And this time I want to save it in a new folder called style. Again, let's save that. Save this, and as you can see, it's gone up one folder, and now it created the style folder that I asked it to create, and then within that it's now dumped my new compiled CSS files. The final item in this object that I'm going to go into some detail in is the save replacement pairs. So let's just put that one back. Save replacement pairs, and so again I have a very similar folder structure, but this time you can see that actually my structure is a little bit more complicated. So even though I've got this styles Sass folder, I've got a main file underneath that in a main folder. I've then got a subfolder within that with a subfile. Now, just by using savePath, you wouldn't be able to keep this folder structure in a different folder location. So that's where save replacement pairs comes in. So it takes a record, which means it takes a string key and a string value. So what the extension is going to do is going to look for the key and replace it with the value. So to make sure that there's no errors when it's searching, I'm going to put these slashes in there to say I'm looking for the folder Sass in the file path, and then I'm going to change that with the folder CSS. So let's save that. So we now should find that when I save this main file, oops, let's bring that out. There we go. We now have a CSS main, and then our main files there. And when I save the subfolder within that, there we go. It's created the subfolder and the subfile as well. So that's all kept my file structure, even though it's copied it to a new location. The great thing about savePath and save replacement pairs is that they actually work in tandem, well, they work together. So what it does is first it checks if savePath needs to be applied, so you can say move it up or down a folder. Then after that it will then apply replacement pairs. So you have the option to move a file up a folder, but then take that whole structure and put it in a new location as well. So just gives you the most versatility there. I also said I'm going to be touching on 3 settings just slightly, but without going into too much detail. So we have 3 settings called line feed. Oops, there we go. And then what that basically is straightforward. It's saying at the end of each line, I want to end it with this, this, or this. That's what that one does. So by default, it's just a normal line feed. And then you've also got indent type. There we go. And then by default, each indent in your CSS file will be a space, but you can change that to a tab. And then finally, you can change your indent width. And let's just, there we go. So as you can see, the default there is 2 spaces, but obviously you could change that to 2 tabs or 1 tab, which obviously would be more traditional with that. And obviously, as you can see, the reason I didn't really want to go into too much detail is that they are all going to be removed when Sass version 2 comes out, because this won't be a thing in that version, nor will it ever be. But yeah, that's fine. Next up, we have excludeList. Now, excludeList is as the name suggests, I can't spell. It excludes certain folders, files, anything. It just takes a glob pattern, which is what these little double stars mean. I won't get into too much detail about glob patterns. Obviously, you can search them up on yourself, or if you'd like me to do a video on those, just let me know. But yeah, so by default, it says to exclude any node modules folders, any files within node modules, sorry, and any files in the VS Code folder. But let's just say, for example, I have this extra folder here with a file in there called ignore me. So I'll just say there's loads of files in there, so I just want to ignore everything in that. So just nice, straightforward. I'm just going to say that it's at my folder root, so I can just start with a slash. Could also obviously just go like that, but let's keep it simple. And node styles and everything within that. So now when I go and try and save this file here, as you can see, there's no success, there's nothing being done, no file being output. But still, when I go and save this main file here, it's still compiling that. So yeah, if I was to remove that and then save this again, there you go, you can see that it's now output this ignored folder. Yeah, nice and straightforward, that one. Now we're going to talk about includeItems, which works in very much the opposite way, but with the same result as the excludeList. But so let's just say that you have this massive project, but you only ever want to compile when you save one or a few files. So let's just, in our settings file here, let's just go include items, and it takes an array of files, and then we're going to say it's just the main CSS file that we want to be compiled. So again, when I save this file here, it's not main, it's only just got some variables in there anyway, it does nothing. But when I go ahead and save my main file, there we go, as you can see, it's outputted the file this time. And yeah, if I was to just get rid of that setting again and then save that, and there you go, it's just outputted a blank file because there was only variables in there anyway. But yeah, that's just that's what that setting's for. Again, a nice brief one. Up next, we have partialsList. So as I was talking about earlier, whenever a partial file is saved, it compiles every other project in your solution. So the traditional on this is when the file starts with an underscore, but obviously going to another project, you might find that they've not actually gone through that route. So as with this one, I've got a folder here called partial files, and then I've got 2 partials within that, and then I've got some actual main files here that take from those. So rather than our usual, let's just bring that up, partials list, which again is just saying anything that starts with an underscore is a partial. What we want to do instead is say that anything that's in the folder partial files is a partial. So now if I was to save this file, it would have just output a blank file of this thing because it didn't have the underscore. But now when I save this, there we go, it's now created every single one of these other files within that folder, and obviously other folders in your workspace too. And so let's just quickly get rid of that setting again. And as you can see now, when I save this partial file, like I said, it's just output a plain CSS file because it doesn't know it's a partial one. Now up we have GenerateMap. GenerateMap, obviously, as you've seen, as I've been saving these files, what it's been doing is it's been outputting the standard map file associated with each one of those because the default for GenerateMap is true. So let's just switch that over to false, and then we're going to jump back over to our file here, just save that, and then there you go. As you can see, this time it's only output the CSS file, it's not actually output the map file as well. And if I was to get rid of that setting, just to go back to default, then now when I save the file, there you go, you can now see it's put the map file out there. So yeah, and obviously not everyone needs those map files, especially for, like maybe for production environments and whatnot, but yeah, that allows you to take those away. So now we're going to talk about a slightly more complicated one, a setting called autoprefix. So if you're not familiar with autoprefix, what it does is any CSS that's not quite standard across all browsers, it will add any prefixes that will allow those settings to work. So for example, in here we've got something that's completely brand new, it's not fully supported, so certain browsers will support the functionality, but it has to have like a dash WebKit or dash MS or something like that just before it, just to get it to work. So by default, let's just again bring up the default. Now the default for this setting is what autoprefixer prefers, which is defaults. This is just by saying that apply what is currently the default settings in our current environment. There are two other things that you can do with the extension. You can set it to a boolean, so you can say nope, I don't want to auto prefix at all, I'm not going to use anything that's out of scope. And on the reverse of that, you can say true. And what true does is actually lets auto prefixer search for a browsers list file or a browsers list component in your package JSON. So it just means that by setting to true, if you already have these items in place, you don't have to go repeating the same setting here as well as in that file. Obviously remembering to maintain two places, it's just not going to work. And yeah, the last one it will take is an array of strings. So again, obviously we can say defaults, and we can say anything that's got greater than 5% support. You can even go to say just in the US or Great Britain. Yeah, just like that. So let's just quickly set that back to default, open up our main one, and let's just quickly save that. I'm going to quickly open this file just to show it changing as I work on it. So this is in IE, as IE is basically now out of support, it's stopped supporting it, so it doesn't have to do the dash MS prefix for that one because it's now IE's dead. Auto prefixer doesn't care about it. But our something new setting does have this WebKit prefix, just to say, okay, WebKit does support this, but it needs to have this prefix on, so that's on there. It always puts it at the beginning, so later on if it does support it, then the one after that takes precedence, just in case its definitions change or anything like that. But yeah, let's just say that actually I'm working in an environment that does support IE. So let's just say that I also want to support IE10. Now when I save the file, there we go, as you can see it's also now done this flexbox, but don't support IE in real life, it's dead. So let's just change up that, save that, and save that. There we go, all pretty again. So we're getting close to the end of the settings now. The next one we're going to talk about is for space directory. So let's just say that we've got a several folders, or in this case a folder with thousands of files in it, as you can see, thousands of files, and it's actually just I know all my Sass files are always going to be in, say, this folder here of styles. So what we can do is we can say to the extension that in this specific directory all my Sass files are under the styles directory. So just saving that there and saving this file. There we go, as you can see it's output the main CSS file there for us. Obviously what this means is that on really large workspaces it can save a bit of compilation time because it's not searching all those extra directories when it doesn't need to. So yeah, obviously this is a file that's not within there, saving that, and as you can see nothing there yet, no changes, not being output or anything like that. So yeah, for space directory. Now we're going to talk about the rootIsWorkspace setting. Bit of a weird name, but hopefully it'll make sense once I explain it. So what we've got here is our main file, and as you can see we've linked to it using the correct path, obviously just saying that it's in the same folder, and it's a file called partial. So obviously when I save this, there we go, it's absolutely fine, it's outputted, no problem whatsoever. But let's just say that somewhere else I've got a really deep file and I just need to link back to something that's very close to the top of the project, the folder. So I just want to go, yep, slash, and then the path towards it. And by default, what the slash does is actually takes you right back to the very beginning of your path. So by saving that, it's obviously trying to find this partial file in your root directory, in my case the C drive. And yeah, obviously it can't find the partials file there, so whoop, error, can't find that file, nothing, no compilation done whatsoever. So what this setting allows us to do is say that, well, actually I want to do this slash at the start, and when I do that I want to say that my slash means that the root is my workspace, not my actual root of my drive. So now that setting's in place, this time let's close that to show that it doesn't come up again. When I save, there we go, we can see that it's actually successfully compiled that. So let's just say, let's change that to 100%. There you go, as you can see it's changing now to 100%. Put it to auto, there it goes back to auto. So the final setting I want to talk about in this scope, yes, there are a few more settings and obviously I'll come back to those in a moment. But yes, this final one is useNewCompiler. So what this means is that the Sass team have recently created a new compiler, which is actually going to be the default one in Sass 2.0. What they've done is they've rebuilt it, made it quicker, so obviously you can use this one just to get a head start on Sass 2.0. By using this particular new compiler, any divisions won't work. Obviously you've got to use the new math.div to do that, so obviously you can refer to that if you want to. So let's just go use new compiler, change that to true. Obviously it's not really a great deal I can really show you about that, but obviously by saving that there you can see obviously it still doesn't affect any sort of compilation or anything like that. One extra thing I will say about it is with the formats setting, what you'd expect is for it to have the line feed return at the end of it, and then any indents to be tabs and to do 3 tabs. But with the new compiler, that's all been taken away, so you still get your standard 2 spaces. So obviously reversing that, save, you can see we've now got 3 tabs, and yeah, nicely formatted. And the double feed as well, you can see there. So they're the only 2 caveats of using the new compiler, but obviously it'll be nice for you to jump in on the Sass 2.0 early. Obviously also take advantage of the quicker compile times as well. So like I not long said, there are some extra settings, and obviously I've not put them into the workspace folder root you can see here, because the ones that you can see in the folder are actually quite special. Obviously all those settings I've shown you so far, they can actually vary from folder to folder. So you can have in the formats one set of formats, and then in the exclude list a different set of formats. They're not tied together whatsoever. They will literally work as 2 completely independent settings. Obviously, unless you've got it set at your workspace level. So that's where the last few settings I'm going to touch on are actually located. First, to actually get to that, I'm just going to quickly open the workspace settings JSON file. As you can see, I've already got 3 of the settings I'm going to talk about in there already. So let's dive into these last 4 settings. So setting number 1 at workspace level is CompileOnWatch. Obviously it makes sense why this one you wouldn't want to set on each individual folder, because at the end of the day I'm compiling on watch on everything. I can't decide yes or no on a project on a folder level. So compile on watch just basically says as soon as I start watching, I want it to go through and compile every file in my project, just in case any changes are made outside of the editor. So obviously setting that to false means obviously I know nothing else has changed. There's no point wasting your time compiling all these files, especially if I've got hundreds or thousands or however many you might have. So this just obviously save you a bit of startup time if you need to dive straight into your Sass. Next up we have WatchOnLaunch. So as the name suggests, as soon as you launch a folder, a workspace, a file, whatever it may be, you can say that as soon as this opens up, I want to start watching straight away. So obviously it works quite nicely in tandem with the compile on watch. So you can say that when I launch, start watching, but don't compile everything. So yeah, this setting just allows you to start watching straight away without having to come down here, click and wait for it to launch up. Now the next one is show output window on. So as you saw from the very first time I launched, as soon as I saved, a little pop-out window came up from the bottom saying, oh, I've noticed this file's changed, I've generated something. So let's just quickly start from the most severe, so error. This will only pop it up if there's been an error with the extension or with the compilation process. As I just said, warning, that does obviously if there's any warnings during the compilation process, or if you do an @warn, then it will pop up and show you what your warning is. After that is information. Information, that's when you get into the realm of, obviously as you can see it's default, when it's started watching, when it's generated a file, those sort of things, that's when it will pop up. And after that you've got debug, and this is basically for the @debug message. So when you've got that in your code, it will pop up and just say, yeah, we've come across a debug, here you go, this is what the debug's output. And last but not least, sorry, second to last, we have trace. Now trace is just there to say like this is the entire process that the compilation has gone through, the extension's gone through, sorry. So I mainly use this for debugging issues and stuff like that. And last but not least, we have none. So that means no matter what, don't output anything, even if compilation absolutely blats out, errors absolutely everywhere. You don't get any pop-up to let you know. You just obviously have the little error down there. That's all you get. So let's just put that back to no warning. There we go. Now, finally, the final setting I'm going to talk about is a show announcement setting. So whenever there's a new release of the extension, you just get a little pop-up in the corner that says, oh, using this version, this is what's changed, whether it be bug fixes, adding new features, or whatnot. Obviously, this just allows you just to turn off getting those just by setting it to false. Yeah, this was actually something that someone in the community recommended, and I was more than happy to pop that in there. So if there's anything you want, reach out, let me know, even submit a PR and I'll review it. That'd be great. Now that we've gone over all the settings of the extension, VS Code also actually does something called commands, and I've got a few commands for the extension that I'm just going to quickly go over. I won't separate these out as much, but as I showed you earlier, you can open the command palette. Let's just go with F1 key for now. So what we can do is I'll just show you all the liveSass settings, and as I'm talking about each one, I'll get it popped up on screen exactly what you can type to get it to pop up. The great thing about commands is that you can actually keybind them, so you can say that when I press this key combination, set the output to error, or start watching or stop watching. Just allows you to do that just with a couple of key commands. So talking about watching and not watching, the first one I want to go over is watch Sass. So this literally just, rather than clicking down there, you can literally just say, yep, start watching my Sass directly for command. On the reverse of that, we've got stop watching. So again, a command that just allows you to say, rather than clicking down in the corner to turn it off, to stop watching, you can just use this command instead. Next up, we have compile current Sass on there. So what this means is that if you, in the editor window, if you've got a Sass file open, just compile that one. Obviously only works for main files, not partial files. I will just mention that. Next we have a one-time compile, or compile Sass without watching everything, watching future changes. So when you're not watching, you can just tell the extension to whip through every file that you can find and compile it, and not bother watching for any future changes. So yeah, just allows you to do one-time compile. Next up, we have to open the output window. So again, the thing I was talking about earlier, popping up from the bottom, this allows you to just open that directly from a command. Next we have report an issue. Now, if something pops up in the corner, that's actually saying that the extension's failed. A full error log that can help me debug gets temporarily saved, and then clicking this will allow you to paste the information into an issue and help me debug it. Obviously, you can also use this when you've just had a general issue with the extension. It'll still ask you to paste in some basic information just to help me identify your operating system and stuff. But yeah, after you've pasted that in, just around below that, above that, whatever, you can just talk about your issue that you're having, or even if you just want to make a feature request, you can use that there. Just obviously get rid of all the extra stuff and issue related stuff and just say feature request. But yeah, it just allows you to go straight to the GitHub page, just straight from a command. Next up, we have two that are to do with debugging. Again, this is if you're having an issue, I can ask you to run these or you can stick them in with an issue yourself. That's fine. So the first one will check whether the file I'm currently working on will be included if I was to save it. So what that means is, based on your current settings, if you was to save the file that you're currently working on, will it output yes or no? Would it compile yes or no? So that just means on the individual file you're working on, if it's just one file that you're struggling with. And then leading on from that, you've then got one that gets all included files. So it gets everything that's going to be included, anything it knows is a partial, and anything that will be excluded, again all based on your settings. So just it's a way of checking for yourself as well, I suppose, and obviously sticking it on an issue if you can't resolve it yourself. And finally, the last one I want to talk about is actually several settings that actually all do a very similar thing. So as you can see, we've got these few here that say show output on. So these just allow you to just change the level that will actually make the pop-up window come up from the bottom. So you can say to do it on a warning, an error, debug information, none, and trace. Just allows you to do the exact same thing directly from a command. And so that's it. I've talked about all the settings and commands that have to do with it. And as I promised you earlier, I will just quickly go into the detail of multi-root workspaces. So I'm just going to quickly open up the folder I had before. So I've just opened up a new our earlier folder, and what we're going to do is just say that we are going to add a folder to it to make it a multi-roots workspace. So this just, again, as I was saying earlier, allows you to separate your settings out and only apply it to specific settings to specific locations. So you can be working on 5 different projects for all these different companies or side projects and apply, even though you can have them all down the side. Obviously your settings are all independent, and then at your workspace level you can have your top tier settings that will apply to all the folders, obviously only being overwritten by settings within those folders. So let's go about converting my earlier project into a multi-root workspace. So add folder to workspace. So you can see it right there. You can also do it from the file drop down. So we have the exact same option in there of add folder to workspace. So as you can see, we've now got my original folder here and then my workspace example one there. Great thing about multi-root workspaces is you can actually add a subfolder. So you can have a chain and then also a subfolder as a top tier folder as well. It's all very technical. I do have a bit more information on my GitHub docs, and obviously if you would like to know any more, then always feel free to open a discussion on GitHub. I'm happy to help wherever I can. So finally stop talking about the settings, features and commands of the extension. I can finally start wrapping up this video for you. I do hope you have enjoyed the video and got something useful out of it. Please like and subscribe, and if you do need any help, feel free to drop in a comment or jump over to the GitHub discussions, and I'll do my best to help wherever I can. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.